Hello everyone, in this video we will be continuing with our Shooter AI tutorial. This time we're going to take a slightly different approach and we'll be setting up an interesting scene. In our scene we will have a guard patrolling the area, and once he spots the player he will go raise an alarm which will trigger an updated behavior for the other enemies that are in the proximity of the alarm. Additionally, I will show how easy it is to use other animations. In order to achieve this, we will need Unity, Game Creator itself, and we will need the behavior, stats, and shooter module. What I'll be showing is one of the ways to do things, but there are many other ways. The goal here is to create a base from which we can expand upon if needed. So let's dive in. So before showing you how to set up the scene yourself, I'm going to show you first what the end result will look like. So we have two regular shooter AIs here who have their patrol areas, and we have our new guard AI here. So the guard will patrol this really small area, so imagine there being a gate or a fence here. He will sit down, showing you how custom animations work, and once he spots our player, he will run towards this button, press it, and this will trigger the alarm. Now the alarm is actually using a regular trigger zone. That's because as of yet our behavior AI does not support on sound yet. So that's why we're using our regular trigger. I'm going to turn off the audio because for some reason when I record the audio is incredibly loud. Let me turn off the trigger so it can actually update, and let me show you how it works. So we have our guard here. He's going to be lazy and sit down. Now this isn't the best animation work, but it's just to show you how it works. Now we're going to enter his field of view. Help! And he's going to trigger the alarm. Now the AI on the right was already in the trigger zone, so that's why he's coming to his aid. They all have really small field of view, so they can't really see us that far. And now the third AI enters the trigger zone as well. He heard the alarm and he's coming to their aid. Perfect. So that's it in a nutshell. So now I'll show you how to set this up yourself. So in order to set up the scene, we're going to go back to our very first shooter AI tutorial. So we set up this basic shooter scene with our soldier. So I'm going to duplicate this one. Now the good thing here is there's no need to have watched any of the other ones. It helps, of course, but tutorial. Wow, my spelling is horrible. Let's open this one up. Now first thing we'll do is we're going to make the scene bigger. There's going to be several characters walking around here. And let's take a look at our first enemy here. Is he still set up correctly? No, he's not. Let's make sure he is before we start duplicating him. There we go. Now I'm not going to touch anything here. He will just have his regular patrol area. I might make it slightly smaller to fit an area, but that's about it. Now there is one update I'm going to do to his behavior. Let's open this up, and that is his use of the gun. So I'm going to copy that over to his patrol tree. Reason for this is because it actually makes more sense for him to be patrolling with a weapon already, because what guard wouldn't? So I'm going to remove them here. So it's a small switch, but it just makes a lot more sense that he already has his weapon while patrolling. There we go. So he's all set up. Now let's duplicate him twice. Let's just do it once first. I'm going to set him up in the middle here, so this will be his area. So we are 6 squares wide. Let's properly set him up in the middle. Now you don't have to do this, I just like to do that. And I'm going to adjust his patrol markers to make sure he stays in this area. You know what? I'm actually going to make it, yeah, 6 wide is fine actually. Going to have him, I want him to walk a bit. Nah, we're all good here actually. Let me just keep it like the way it is. I'm going to duplicate this guy so we have a second one, and yeah, there we go. Now this is not the most interesting patrol behavior, but that's fine. I'm going to disable them just for a second. Now let's go back to our enemy here. So I'm going to update his patrol behavior. So I'm going to remove 3 of his markers. So he will just have 3 markers. Going to put those exactly where he is. Oh. There we go. Well, he doesn't have to go that far. Rotate this. And let's move this a tiny bit. And rotate this as well. There we go. So this will be his area. Now I'm not going to overcomplicate his AI simply to make the tutorial a tiny bit shorter. So I'm just going to remove these markers for now. I don't want to complicate his AI too much. Obviously you can keep all of those and simulate the other AI's behavior. Just want to keep this one a bit simple, otherwise our tutorial will take forever. Now let me place an object for him to sit on. Now like I mentioned, if you don't have the same animations as I do, so it's some behavior pack, that's completely fine. You can use any animation you want. Just adding this block here because I want him to sit here. Is this high enough? Well, we'll see if it's high enough. If not, I can drag it up a bit. Perfect. Now I want there to be an area for him to press a button. So yes, this is going to be overly simplistic. Oh, not a cube. Cylinder looks nicer. But this will just be a regular pose for him to press a button on. So let's make this a bit smaller. Our AI is not a giant. Actually, he's about, yeah, that's about right. Perfect. There we go. So let me add a button to this as well. So that's just going to be a square. Already make that a tiny bit smaller. Doesn't have to be that big. There we go. Well, this might actually still be too big. Let's make it even smaller. Perfect. rotate it a tiny bit. Now there's a limit to how far our AI will be able to reach. It's not perfect. Just calling in a red material for it to stand out. Oh. This is actually included in Game Creator in one of the examples, so you will have the exact same color. There we go, perfect. Now let's make that a child, and we're going to create a new child, which will be the alarm marker. So let's drag in a marker here, and we'll place this in front. There we go. Now it's important the tip of the arrow doesn't collide with an object. For some reason I've noticed that if the tip collides with an object, our character has trouble actually getting to the position. I'm not really entirely sure how that works, just make sure it's not inside. Now we're going to create our alarm post next. So let's enable our guys here and see where we need to set this. Well, this is about the middle. So let's create a new cylinder. Now this is not going to be a pretty alarm post. It's just going to serve a purpose. It doesn't have to be that big. It's going to be tall, let's say 4 tall, that's about right. There we go. It's going to be about the middle of our two characters. Perfect. Let's add a cube, which is supposed to represent our speaker here. There we go. I'm not trying to win any awards here. Now I'm going to make this red as well, simply to, you know, create a link between our button and visual link between our button and our speaker. Doesn't make any sense, but I just like it like that. Now let's drag that in. Call this alarm post. Let's call this alarm. Well, just alarm. It's fine. Perfect. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create our trigger area. So I'll create a new child for this, and let's call it trigger. Now let's call it actually alarm trigger. Easier to find. And our alarm trigger will have a set of actions which we'll be using. But let's first add an audio source. There we go. So this is where you will drag in the actual alarm clip, and you can play with these settings. Just adding it here just to show you where it should be, but I'm going to disable it because, like I mentioned before, when recording, for some reason it's really loud. Going to add a sphere collider. So this sphere collider will be our trigger area. So I'm going to make it about, yeah, this size is fine. Oh, maybe that's a bit small. There we go. That's about right. Cool. So let's add the trigger component. Now this one will be a on tag enter. So the reason for that is because I don't want this to be set to just one character. I want any character that has a tag, so I'll just use the enemy tag. If you don't have an enemy tag, you can just create a new tag here. So once a character with an enemy tag enters, something will happen. So these will be our actions. Now let me give our guys that tag. So make sure it's actually the character itself. So let's enemy. And you can choose whatever tag you want. I'm using enemy, but if you want to use unicorn, you can use unicorn. Doesn't really matter. So there we go. So we have our alarm post, trigger, and a set of actions. We have our guard, who will chill, he will sit down. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to pull all of these back a little. Otherwise they'll be a bit too close to the action, so let me actually do that. So don't want them to be that close to the action. So let's just pull it here. Bear with me, I'm going to update their markers a bit. So let's just stay here, please. There we go. That's fine. That's good, and that's good. Now let's do the same with our other guy. The goal here is for the alarm to trigger our AIs to take action and not actually be inside of our player. So let's just do it like this. 5, 6, they're all fine. Cool. There we go. So this is the basic setup of our scene. So what we're going to do next is we're going to set up our new guard behavior tree, and we're going to set an updated behavior on trigger enter. Perfect. So we're going to start off by creating the new updated temporary behavior for our two shooter AI characters here. So as you might remember, they have a fully functioning behavior tree with actions, patrol areas. Those are all simply copied over, so they'll do their job just fine. Now what we want to happen is once they enter our trigger area from our alarm post, they will update their behavior. So we want something new to happen once the alarm goes off. Now, like I mentioned, there's no way for the behavior module to do this based on sound yet. So this is going to be based on the trigger enter. Doesn't really make any difference, to be completely fair. This is actually slightly easier to control, as audio can be quite difficult to control at times. So let's set up the actions. So the actions are actually really simple because we don't want to drastically change anything here. So we're going to go to behavior, and we're going to choose update behavior. So if you've seen our cover AI video, you might have noticed that we were using stop behavior. In this case, we don't want to do that because we want our characters to revert back to their normal behavior tree. So we're not going to create entirely new behaviors here. We're just going to temporarily give them new instructions. Now this won't work without the update behavior, simply because the behavior tree will always supersede any other actions, so we need to make sure we call on that. Now because in patrol they're not running yet, we need to make sure they actually run, and we're going to use invoker for all of these actions because there are several different AIs here, and any of them that enters this area needs to trigger these actions. So while using invoker, we only need to set this up once. That's the nice thing of the invoker function. Now, next up, we're going to have them move. And where do we have move? I'm really that blind. Let me just type it in. There we go, move character. And we'll have invoker again. And we can have them move towards a position of a character. I'm just going to move them to a marker for now. You can choose something else. So if you actually want them to move towards the guy himself, the guard, you can do so. I'm just going to move them to this marker. Find it a bit easier. Just because the alarm went off doesn't make them omniscient. So they won't know exactly where to go. So this is our guard here. And we're just going to drag in marker 1. So there we go, they're going to go to his patrol marker. And once they arrive here, let's have them wait before, triggering any other behaviors. So they're gonna wait here for 2 seconds, and if they spot our character, their normal behavior tree will actually kick in again. So we are only updating their behavior, we're not stopping it. So that's it. That's literally all we have to do here. So once this is active, their behavior will be updated. They will move to this position and see our player and start engaging in combat. That's all there is to it. Now we're going to disable this because the alarm didn't go off yet, and our guard first needs to trigger it. So we're going to create a new behavior tree. So let's call this behavior guard AI. Now let's create a root and selector. Now, in the example I showed in the beginning of the end result, I only had 2 tasks because I only wanted him to take action on sight, and when he was not looking, I'll just complete it this time and just add the behavior he needs to perform once he gets shots as well. It's just slightly easier. So can see. So this is going to be the most interesting one. So what is he going to do when he sees us? So he's going to go to our marker, so our alarm post marker. So let's make sure our guy runs. I think change property, there we go. So we're gonna have our guy run. Perfect. So if you watched any of the other videos, you might have noticed I'm quite the fan of our wave clip. I'm not really sure why. I just like him to wave, but you can use any animation you want. But he's going to wave here. We're not going to wait until this completes. So we're going to add our little default help message here. Help. You can change this to something else, obviously. But considering he's raising alarm, it actually really makes sense for the, well, maybe the very first time. I want to make sure he has time to say this. And I want to make sure he actually has time to perform this as well. There we go. So he can run, he will do his little gesture, he will call out for help. There we go, and he will wait 1 second. Now, next up, we want him to move towards the marker. But I'm going to have him look towards the marker first. So let's call this alarm marker, or marker alarm. Let's just call it like that. And now he's going to move towards that marker. Reason I'm doing this is because it will most likely look slightly smoother. Variable, you cannot use marker itself inside of a behavior tree, only in actions. And this is going to be the exact same marker alarm, so we only need to set up one variable here. Perfect. And once he gets there, so that's why wait until he arrives is needed, he's going to reach out his hand. Now this is not some complex animation, it's actually the ability to have him reach out with his hand. By default left hand is set, and the first time I tried this I changed it to right because it makes more sense, most people are right-handed, but he's actually carrying, he will be carrying his gun in his right hand, so that's why left actually makes more sense. And he will reach towards a variable because that will be our button. So invoker button alarm, there we go. So he will reach towards the alarm. Now we need to have this wait for a tiny bit as well, so actually let's do 0.8 seconds. If we don't use wait, I've actually noticed he will revert back real fast. And now we're going to set active our alarm trigger. So we'll call in a variable yet again. Trigger alarm will be set active. And this will trigger the behavior. Now because we had him reaching out his hand, we don't want him to stay in that strange position where his hand is just reaching out. So we need to use his hand again, character hand, and this time he's not going to reach, he's going to let go. And that's it, he will drop his hand back to his original position. Now this is important, otherwise it will be wonky. And once he's done that, he's actually just going to engage in combat just like the other guys. So combat guard. So our guard will, and we will choose wait to finish. So that was maybe a bit much, but basically he can run, he will wave and ask for help, then he will go to our marker, he will reach out his hands to press the button. This will activate the alarm trigger, he will put his hand back, and he will execute the basic action. So that's why we duplicated the regular shooter AI, because we still want those actions to be present. And there we go. Now this will be pretty much exactly the same. So this will trigger based on his health attribute. So if his health is less than 100%, he will perform some actions. Now I'm going to make him realize he got shot for a bit. Now he will change state, because I always find it, more interesting if he actually gets hurt, and displays this as well. So he will get hurt. He will just shout for help. He will not be raising his arms because he just got shot. There we go. This won't take that long. Perfect. So let's give him the ability to run as well. He can run. He will run in a fashion where he's hurt. I don't know, I think it's fun. I could revert back to that and just add a way, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's interesting if he actually gets hurt. Now, pretty much everything else will be the same, so what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy that over. Let me make all of this small, where we'll start by literally copying the weight. He will rotate, he will move, he will reach out. So all of this is literally going to be the same, because, you know, if it's based on sight or if he got shot, he's still going to raise the alarm, so that's not going to be any different. Going to activate our alarm. Going to let go. And now there's going to be one small difference. So we want his state to go back, because we don't want him to, you know, stay hurt while in combat. So let's just change this to revolver idle. So he's ready for combat again, and we're going to execute the same actions. There we go. So pretty much exactly the same, so that's why we just copied over everything, but we will have him revert back to his normal state. Now if he can't see us, we want him to patrol, so he cannot see us, and this will simply be, let's just copy this over. He cannot run, so let's disable this. And just like in the updated behavior of our normal shooter AIs, we want him to be carrying around his gun and ammo beforehand. I'm going to give him 50 bullets. He's a well-prepared guard. He has his revolver. Perfect. And now he will execute the patrol actions. So let's make a variable out of this again. And patrol guard. Perfect. And we'll choose wait to finish. There we go. So our guy will be patrolling his area. So there it is, a pretty simple behavior tree. And now we need to alter his patrol behavior, because, well, let's already start by removing these markers. Because there's only 3 markers here, and we want him to do something slightly different here as well. So we want him to actually sit down, you know, take a break for a moment, and we'll simply do something else. So he will still move to marker 1, so that's the first marker. This will be the same. I'm going to have him wait a second this time. Now he will move to marker 2, and that's where we're going to change things. So once he arrives at marker 2, we're going to add something new. So we're going to change his state. So let's just call state. But this time I'm going to use a custom animation clip. Now you can, you know, add an animation clip where he dances if you like that. It's completely up to you. Like I mentioned, I use a sitting animation. So I'm going to open those up. and he's going to sit low. What is it? Sit low. I think it's low, I'm not really sure. That's pretty low. So our guy is actually going to sit down. So let's start him here. Oh, change this to animation clip. So he's going to sit down. We'll give him a moment. So I don't want him to, oh, the wrong one. I want him to get back up straight away. Now, if I would have had an animation where he was drinking a coffee, I would add that here as well, but I don't have that. Now let me just duplicate this one, and we want him to end his sitting animation, and we're going to drag that after our wait. So he sits for 4 seconds, which is really short, but otherwise takes too long, and then he's going to stand back up. Now, because this is an animation clip and not a default state, we need to call his default state as well. So let me actually just duplicate this one. So here we have his end animation, and now we need to call a state again. Now, reason for this is if you don't do this, he will stay in this strange animation because it's not a default state made by Game Creator. So we need to make sure we set his state back. Now, I didn't have any completely custom made animations for walking, etc. So that's why this is needed. So yeah, he's going to back to his revolver idle state, and then let's give him time to actually do this, get back up, change state, and then he's going to, let's actually move, there we go. So I'm going to do it like this. I want him to have time to get back up. So let's give him that 1 second. Going to change his state here, and then he's going to move to marker 3. There, he's going to wait for another 1 second. No, 1 second, that's fine. And that's it. Now he's going to restart his actions. There we go. So these are all the same, and this is when it becomes interesting. Once he arrives at marker 2, he will sit down. I put the block at the marker, so he should know exactly where to sit. It's going to sit for 4 seconds, get back up, give him time to get back up, and then we're changing his state back to idle, revolver idle, and then he will move to marker 3. Stand there for a second, and we'll restart the loop. Now you can expand this by adding different things to happen at every single state. I'm not doing that because I think it's, he doesn't have to do something crazy at every marker, but I'll just leave it like this. There we go. Now let's see what actually happens when we press play. I'm sure I forgot something here, but yeah, well, he's sitting a bit high, so maybe he's expecting chairs in that animation. I'm not really sure. Markers 3. Now let's interrupt our guy. Dude. And that's not... Oh, there we go. So it seems like we forgot to set up our guard AI. So let's do that. Yeah, there we go. He was still using a shooter AI, which is while he was still patrolling, but not doing everything else we thought him to do. And we forgot parameters as well. So let's set those up. Forgot quite a bit here. So patrol guard, combat guard. We set up several here. So marker alarm. So that's where the guard will walk to and turn to. We have our button, which he reaches for. And obviously we still have our trigger alarm. I wasn't going to do a lot without those. So let's open up our character again. Let's drag in that patrol. Let's drag in the combat. And let's drag in our marker. Where is our marker? There is our marker. So let's drag that in. The button, which you'll press, and we have our trigger, which we will activate. There we go. This should be better, so let's hit play again. Perfect. So everyone's patrolling. Now my field of view for every character is quite small. That's for demonstration purposes. In a normal scene there's loads of things that can obstruct their view. There isn't really in my scene. So he's reaching out, pressing the button. So our other guard was already in reach. He doesn't see us yet. So let's wait until his friend is in reach as well. And everyone's in reach. And now they can engage in combat. So maybe there's a bit too much waving going on here, but they can shoot each other as well. So their bullets, as you can see, hit each other too, which is quite realistic. Maybe not the smartest guys, but it's quite realistic. They can actually hit each other. So there we go. Pretty simple scene. Showing you how to use updated behaviors, how to trigger that with a new trigger. So in our next video we're actually going to set up a player controller. I'm not actually going to use it, but I thought it was going to be useful to set up a player controller that has stats, has health, and actually can use cover with triggers as well. Thought it was going to be fun, and I'll be using that in my tutorial scenes from then on. So thanks for watching. If you like, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.